Hey, I didn't get that on camera.
Thanks, Christos. So, let's start. So, thank you for being here. It's a great tribute to Sasha Soldatow, who said that his highest value was friendship and that his real work was relationships. And it's really a tribute to Sasha that you have come here. So I will soon call on Christos to launch this thing. First of all, I will start with the acknowledgement of country. I'm very happy to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Gadigal people, and we pay respect to their elders. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Yay!
I'm speaking to you now as the publisher of this book. After Christos speaks, I'll come back as the writer and give you a short reading. And then after that, you're going to meet a new young performer. Some of you may know him, Jonny Hawkins, who was nowhere near being born when Sasha first performed his electrifying poetry poem sequence, Rock and Roll Sally, and he will interpret that in the present in his own way. The book owes so much to so many people. I can't go through all that now, or we'll be here all night. The acknowledgements pages are many in there, and again, I thank everybody who contributed. Now I want to thank the people who have helped with this launch. Most of all, Johnny Allen, who has been amazing. As some of you know, he has been creating events and bringing people together for decades, and he has really been so invaluable in making this evening happen. And Tiago Baldwin and everyone at Kinsellas who've been a real joy to work with. And now I'm going to ask Christos to launch the book. He barely needs any introduction. You all know him with an extraordinary body of work, really bold and original work, always something surprising, something new. But some people may not know that one of his earliest books was co-written with Sasha Soldatow called Jump Cuts, and it really ought to be reissued, like a lot of Sasha's books ought to be. Any publishers listening, listen up. I think that's all that I need to say, and now it's over to Christos. Thanks.
Thank you, Inez. Jesus, I'm so nervous because I keep thinking of Sasha saying, Christos, why have you got Tsiolkas? He's just not funny. Like a lot of you, Sasha comes into my memory so consistently. So just the other day, I get a text from a friend who is in Crete in Greece, and she writes, I'm on this beach and everyone's gone nude, and they're all these Germans in their 60s and 70s, and I don't want to go nude. And I sent her back a text going, the best advice a friend, and this was Sasha Soldatow gave me, was, Christos, you don't want to be one of those men who takes off their shirts at nightclubs when they're 50. Thank you, Sasha. The other advice he gave me was, you don't want to be an enfant terrible after 35. Which I didn't understand when he told me, and I understand it now. I think it's really important to say to all of you, because you're here because some of you knew and loved this man, Sasha Soldatow. Argued with him, loved with him, had sex with him, got angry with him, got high with him, changed the world with him. One of the most important things that I need to say to you tonight, because Sasha was so instrumental in me getting published and me being a writer, actually trusting my voice, But I knew Sasha first before I met him, and that was through, and this is one of the things you've done in this book, is to talk about Sasha Soldatow as a writer, and I don't want that to be forgotten. I was a young guy, and I still remember this night, I read a book called, a collection of short stories called Privately Not Open. And I was so thrilled by the stories in that book. I was so moved by those stories in that book. And it's still one of those memories, you know, we all have memories, right? That are indelibly in your mind, they are central. And I am in my early 20s, I go over to my friend Megan Nicholson's place in inner city Melbourne, and we take speed, and I talk to her about this book that I've read that I love, that I just was blown away by. And that happened again with a book called Mayakovsky in Bondo, which I still think is one of the most astonishing books written in this country. It happened also with a pamphlet that he wrote called What is this gay community What is this gay community shit? Which I read when I was a young activist, and it felt like, even though it was a generation difference, that he was speaking to something that I was concerned about, the corporatization of something called sexuality. Something called, gay, lesbian. And I think that's really important to say, that I fell in love with Sasha Soldatow before I met him. I fell in love with his writing. What do I want to say? That there is, the beginning of Inez's book, there is a young woman called Estelle, and she asks a really good question: why should we care about Sasha Soldatow? I think Inez's book answers that question in a variety of ways, but what it meant for me, and this is really important because I think it doesn't get said enough. I grew up in a time when to write the Australian novel was to write the English novel. Right? And when I read Privately Not Open, when I read Mayakovsky in Bondi, I went, actually, I can be a writer that writes a book that is the Australian novel that is not a fucking English novel. And that meant the world to me. And that is not said enough about Sasha's work and what that promise was. I wish he had kept writing. I wish he had lived. I wish, because I think he was a phenomenal writer, and that promise and that encourage, like I have those conversations all the time in my head with Sasha. What would you think about this world now? You know, what would you think about the politics now? Where would you be with this politics now? I would love those arguments. I don't have those arguments enough. So to Estelle, I would say to you, I don't know you. Why is Sasha Soldatow important? Because it changed for me and for a generation of us writers that came out of this country called Australia, the notion of what the Australian novel could be. That we have to obey kind of obeisance to the English. And I am really grateful to Sasha for that. Man, he was a hard man. I had felt his ghost over me, and he would just go, oogie boogie. There are no ways Christos. But I felt his ghost over me for the last few days. I want to really honour that about Sasha.
Jump cuts. Talk about jump cuts.
I will talk about jump cuts, because that was a phenomenal experience, Susan, to work together on a book that I think is crazy, I think it is loose, I think it is mad. I'm going to say too, I can't talk about jump cuts without thanking Joe and Paul Freeman, who allowed us to be published, because I don't think it would be published today. Because it's a book about art and politics and sex and argument and debate, and we nearly tore each other apart. And all of us who love Sasha were in that world, right? He was not an easy man. He was someone who made you so angry He actually said to me, and it's in Inez's book, "You're worse than Stalin." I thought, God, my friend Gina went, "Sasha, think about that." But in those arguments, I learned so much about argument and debate and critical thinking, and I owe that to Sasha. I also learned, actually, I don't want to be an enfant terrible. I don't want to be. I wish he was alive today, just keeps writing. I wish I hadn't. I don't want self-destruction in my life. Sasha warned me about that all the time. I think he was angry that I didn't follow that path, and that's the complication of who that man is and was. But he, I think I owe who I am as a writer, and I think a whole generation of us queer writers, and not only queer, I would say, multicultural writers, owe something to a man called Sasha Soldatow, and that's what I want to honour tonight. There's so much I want to say about Sasha, but I will just leave it at the most loving memory in Inez's book is when he met my mum and dad. He was so kind, and he bought caviar for Mum. And I said to him, "Geez, Mum's a working class peasant woman. She's not going to want caviar." And he went, "No, I'm going to give her some caviar." And Mum, he walked through the door and he said, "You're here. This is your gift." And she went, "Oh, caviar." Oh, that is a lesson that I will not forget. Do not make fucking assumptions. We have this. There's so much I want to say about Sasha and his writing. But there's another reason we're here tonight, and this is for this woman, Inez Baranay, who. This is a book of devotion, a book of honesty, a book of loyalty, a book of trust, a book of argument, a book of debate. You have done something that I think a lot of us here would like to have done, Inez, and honour Sasha's memory. And you've done it in the most incredibly loving, honest, unafraid way. You've done it as a labour of love, and we are. I'm sure that I'm not only speaking for, in fact, I'm speaking for all of us here who knew Sasha. Thank you. Thank you. The complexity of a man who was a hard man, who was a loving man, who laughed so much, who gave so much, who squandered so much. And you haven't been afraid of doing that story in a really meticulous, rigorous, loving way. I think that is quite an achievement, and that's part of what we should be celebrating tonight. There's nothing more I can add except to say thank you for being here. I hope one day that a generation after us is reading Mayakovsky in Bondi. I hope a generation after us is reading Tsiolkas. Thank you, Susan. Is reading Private Do Not Open. Is reading, and I think, what is this gay community shit? I don't think only queers. I don't really think only feminists. I think people who are engaged in politics and the struggle of what politics mean will be reading that for a very long time. Yeah. Thank you for putting that back into our world and into our culture. That is a great thing. Thank you. I'm sorry that I wasn't funny.
I have to borrow a book. Yes. I've got it, thanks. I'm going to read to you a little bit now. I'm going to read from chapter 10. It's called Out for a Bop, subtitled Parties, Fun, Our Golden Age, 1970s. Each chapter starts with a quotation from Sasha, and the one at the head of this chapter goes, I was going to tell you about how I once went to 21 parties in 20 days, but it's all a bit of a haze. In those days, you'd expect to go to at least one party every weekend, often more than one in a night. I went to a lot of parties with Sasha, some that other people remember more than I do. One of my few memories from the earliest times with Sasha is of a party. It was the early 70s, soon after we first met. I have the feeling we were already well known to each other. I was in a small group, maybe we all came in one car. In those days, you considered yourself invited to a party if you ran into people who knew where it was on. A large house, lots of people, not all people we all knew. We noticed a girl, 20s I guess, like we were, dancing alone, dancing really well, with a quirky, confident style, dressed, as I think of it now, in a more Melbourne way, stylish, a self-made, only me, street way. Sasha said, hold it, pulling out his wallet and keys and whatever else might have been heavy in his pocket and dropped it in someone's lap, mine it must have been, as he skipped to the dance floor to bop right along in front of her, and they faced each other too, really good dancers dancing, and that was Sasha. Confident, talented, and what's that something else where he assumes the right. He went to dance, you could hold his stuff. He didn't need for there to be more people dancing before he'd get up. He was very watchable. He was also very watchable at the poetry readings. Later in the 70s, Sasha began performing at readings around town, and his readings were the most theatrical of all the poets. Some people have moved to Sydney, especially for its vibrant poetry scene, more in chapter 15. There were a lot of readings held in pubs or at large houses, notably one by the harbour at Balmain with a large amphitheatre-like lawn between the house and the water's edge. Things could get raucous, the poets were known for it. On one occasion, Sasha took off all his clothes and read to everyone in nonchalant nakedness. The parties after the pub or a reading were often at those big houses people could rent cheaply then, where the music might get louder than talking, where you drank some more after coming from drinking, where people might be passing around joints out in the yard. I might not have known, but there didn't seem to be all that much other social drug use in those days. There were pills. I didn't know who took what pills, speed, mandrax. A sense that some people must have been into pharmaceuticals, but not in a party way. But then again, that story Sasha told often about smashing bottles on the road. Quote, to think I've become the kind of girl who smashes bottles on the road after a party. End quote. Sasha would remember me saying, after another party, he would repeat this. It was in his repertoire of faithful remembrances, part of the myth we make of each other. He was repeating it the last time I saw him in the early 2000s. As Sasha tells it in the memoir section of the Rock and Roll Sally edition published in 1990, the party was the night after he posed for photographer Brett Hilder in 1977, posing naked on red sheets in the famous Marilyn Monroe calendar pose. This picture would go on the posters for the show and be resurrected for display over the years. In 2020, the poster was featured in an exhibition called Yesterday's Heroes as part of that year's Mardi Gras Festival in Sydney. Quote, that night, Inez and I went to Steve J. Spears' party in Surrey Hills where the contents of many medicine cabinets had been tossed into the punch. The day ended much later, sitting in the gutter, throwing many empty bottles across the road. Inez said, to think I've become, end quote. Darlinghurst, not Surrey Hills, I thought, and just that house's medicine cabinet, which it was understood would include a stash of uppers and downers and various things with side effects. But, quote, many medicine cabinets fit the hyperbolic mood. In my mind, the scene is of us affecting something affectlessness in our stupid, petty vandalism. But he says crying, and crying was easy then, so it might have been like this, quote, I can't remember if we were crying with laughter or laughing to stop from crying. We've become all kinds of persons since then, says Inez. And now, Jonny Hawkins.
I'll do it. Can you hear me up there? Yeah. You can hear me okay? Oh,
That's
Jesus.
still on, is that
Yeah,
okay?
I'm gonna get rid of it. So, I was given a phone call by sweet Johnny Allen, who's a huge part of this evening, and he introduced me to Inez, who in turn introduced me to Sasha for the first time. And being in this room, I feel like something of a fraud, not deeply knowing a person, but spending the last 3 weeks learning all about them. So I hope by some version of osmosis, I'm able to bring a piece of them to you tonight. And please don't be too harsh if it's not what you wanted it to be. I have in my bag some little pieces of Sasha that he was described as being a drag queen at a slant. So, here is my drag queen at a slant. Stop. I'm a sidewalk sister. I'm a genuine mister. I'm a nut without a screw. I'm a good time, honey. If there's a lot of money, I'll wrap my legs around you. I'm a wonderful wag with a cellophane bag that's filled with slippery cheese. As folks go by, I fix them with my eye. I'll leave them screaming, please, please. Hold me in your pocket. Stick me in your socket. Don't ever let me go crazy. Knock me up on my feet. Suck me off in the street. Kick me out when I grow lazy. I'll be a woman or a man or a double-decker tram. I'll be anything you want me to be. I'm pretty weak at 7. I'm stronger by 11. But when I'm drunk at 12, I'm me. He wanted to be anointed. He wanted to be sainted. He wanted to have it good both ways. He wanted to lie down in gutters, be trodden on by hobnob pricks as hard as bricks. He wanted to lick the man who pushed him to the brink. He wanted to form a link with some humanity. Intellectually, he wanted to be gay. But it couldn't be that way. So he left his desires by the window, he took his clothes to the laundromat and he walked out the door, leaving the stereo playing, leaving his debts unpaid. He didn't leave no note for the milkman. The wine kept on coming, 6 flagons of white and red a week. He chose to be a woman when he wasn't at home. He had the strength of a man in his tight trousers. He sits to read the pleading letters from his wife. Who is to feel what I feel? Though there's something or other of hate, is it too late to get it straight? Why don't you learn how to menstruate? He wrote him back. Oh, Jim, was the reply. Since you went away, I don't blow no more, except into my own hand. Tonight, he punches horny records at a bar off King's Cross, eyeshadow baby blue, glitter on his fingers, moving to the tune, hands in his pants, eyes in his head. She feels like a star fucker on a night off. He feels like he's gonna make it tonight. He wants to swoon in the arms of a prince in stockings while waiting for a rich man to lay. He's looking to make some bed music with a queen. Living off the curve in his back, his glance suggests you follow him out, back of the kitchen, but I don't go, not tonight. I don't feel like dancing. Fuck your mind, he yells at me as I go home to watch late night TV, to listen to a couple of tracks from Iggy Pop, to shoot some sperm with a friend. When you're tired of love and your best friend doesn't even ring you on the telephone and you sit at home alone waiting for the phone to ring, but it doesn't, so you think, isn't life a funny thing? Nothing like a blossom or a peach, and love always out of reach. When you're tired of love, you've got nothing to give. When you're tired of love and there's nothing to give. When you're tired of love, when you're tired of love. When you're tired of love and there's nothing to reach for but love. When you're sick of your friends, those superficial slugs, spend $500 drinking with thugs who think you're a lady, they know that you're a queen, and they root you in the morning like a washing machine. When you're tired of love, then there's nothing to give. When you're tired of love, then there's nothing to give. When you're tired of love, then you're tired of love, and there's nothing to reach for but love. When you're tired of life, it's a drag, sugar. When you're tired of what? He's a bag, sugar. And you think you dropped your bundle? It's a bag, sugar. Close your mouth, close your heart. Don't be vicious, don't be smart. When your lover tells you lies, close your eyes, sugar. Turn and say, my, how time flies, sugar. A surprise, sugar, but be careful that you buy a disguise, sugar, for you'll need it tomorrow. When you sacrifice your sorrow, when you're tired of love, buy a new dress. When you're tired of love, find a Catholic and confess. When you're tired of love, go out and get stoned. When you're tired of love, eat a chicken that's boned. When you're tired of love, grow a moustache. When you're tired of love, you get so happy you crash. When you're tired of love, find your faith in a syringe. When you're tired of love, spend your money on a binge. Become a crook, go and take another look. Go to Paris, put on airs, do the lot. No one cares. I don't know if you're sick of me.
No! Never! Never! Never!
We can finish there. We can have a fun one or a sad one. You choose.
Fun!
Sad? What would you like, Inez? All right.
Okay, get you. I'm ordered myself.
Sex, rock and roll, and crime. That's what I do with my time. If it feels good for me, and if you don't like it, then you're just bourgeoisie. Sex, rock and roll and crime, guaranteed to give a good time. When I hear the beat, then I'm in luck. When there's the music, time to suck and fuck. Down on your luck, criminal activity, lots of ability for sex, drugs, rock and roll and crime. When it comes to practice, count me out. When it comes to patience, I behave like a lout. When it comes to a future, ooh, wait and see. But when it comes to anarchy, you purchase it for free. With sex, rock and roll and crime, that's what I do with my time. If it feels good, then it is good. And if you don't like it, you can fuck off. Up you. One more.
No, it's not. From Crow Uni. Years ago. This book.
Excuse me.
Is it that?
I met him again at a party. He was still asking for men for a fuck, affectionately, embarrassed to be that way. I managed to ignore him till he came up, handed me a perno and said, "You know, Sydney is different from Paris and different again from Berlin in the 20s, the Weimar Republic, full of tits and asses and falsies, and the men in the bogs to be blown to smithereens when the war comes to the trenches that are now still valleys in the wood." When I came back from Berlin after all this, I smoked cigarettes, Hollywood style, chewing the end between my teeth before the war. Ask any passerby, they'll tell you. A waiter passes by and then he laughs. "Thanks, babe, your tie's on crooked too." But worse, after the Cold War, you now need passes to where the asses once were. The gas bang glitter of a soldier up the wall. "Come on, babe, it's good. It's all good." He tells me more as we foxtrot. In 1963, all they wanted from me was to hold my hand, and that never did for me, not in 63, he says, as we do a sort of quarter turn between the tables. On the street again, he finds me. He comes to me smiling. "I've had enough of Isherwood who made me cry. When Sally went away, I wanted her to come back at first, but not anymore. No, if she did, we'd have babies, and I don't care for that fantasy at all." We both laugh, and then he says, "You know, suffering. Big, monumental suffering. That's out now." He puts his hand around me like a daddy.
Thanks, everybody. That's all, folks. There are still books on sale and the books are published.